What's up, Shopify developers? Have you heard the news? Shopify have announced late last year that they have decided to deprecate SASS from Shopify Themes, citing reasons such as slow load times when using the online theme editor, and the fact that they are using a legacy version of SASS and that upgrading would result in breaking changes to themes. This means that themes containing .scss files will continue to function and storefronts will not be affected if the theme already uses SASS. However, they are strongly encouraging developers to migrate their SASS style sheets to CSS style sheets or compiling their SCSS files outside of Shopify. To put it in simple terms, you know that giant theme.scss.liquid file that you might have sitting in your theme? Well, that's now going to be replaced by a single CSS style sheet instead. No nesting, no variables, none of the features that Shopify developers have come to rely on when coding styles. But never fear, this is actually a good thing for lovers of SASS, as it's now forcing theme developers to move their SASS compilation locally, where they are now able to split and organize CSS code into separate files and folders, and to use the latest version of SASS. How do we do this? Stay tuned to find out. So what we're going to cover in today's tutorial is how to create your own SCSS build environment locally. You guys have been asking me, with support for Slate long gone and now SCSS being deprecated, what do we use as our best build environment? Well, today I'm going to show you something I came up with which combines Gulp.js with the Node version of Shopify Themekit to create a build environment that combines the benefits of SCSS with the simplicity of Themekit. So let's get started. So I'm going to start this tutorial off in the usual spot, my development store, Chris Testing Shop. And I want to bring your attention over here to the theme library and look at these two different versions of the debut theme. I'm going to show you how I found out these version numbers in just a sec, but I want to show you something that is a key difference between both of these themes. Now, this one was generated before the announcement about SCSS being deprecated from Shopify Themes, and this one was created after. So let's go into Actions and click on Edit Code. And what I want you to notice once it loads is in the Assets folder. So if I scroll down, open up Assets, going to just increase, it's going to look a bit squishy, but it'll be easier for you guys to see on the other end. I'm going to go into Assets here and look at the theme.scss.liquid file. As you can see here, there's already a warning saying SCSS support is deprecated in themes. Convert it to CSS or CSS.liquid for a better performing online store and theme editor. Okay, so there's the topic of the video right there. If I just get rid of that warning because we're aware of it, you'll see that we are using a theme.scss.liquid file here in the online editor on this 16.7.0 version of Debut. Now, if I go out and then back into the other Debut theme, 17.10.0, and hit Edit Code, again, scroll down to Assets, look inside, you'll see instead of a theme.scss.liquid file, we have a theme.css file. Interestingly enough, it has the same comment, or what seems to be the same comment at the start. But if you look at this file, it's all compiled CSS. There is no SCSS in here. So that might seem like, oh my God, we can't use SCSS in Shopify Themes anymore. Really what it means is we can't write and edit SCSS in this environment anymore, in the online store editor. Which kind of makes sense. If you're messing about with SCSS, you really want to do it locally anyway. And in this video, we're going to show you how to create a local development environment that's actually a lot nicer and configurable than what you can do right here. As always, I recommend you develop Shopify themes locally. I don't recommend going in and using these online code editors anyway, unless you're doing a simple change. Now, just before we move on, I want to show you how I got these version numbers so that you can figure out what version of Debut or whatever theme you're using is. I just went to Customize here, which opens up the theme editor. And as you can see, I think that's actually the name I gave it. You have to go into, I believe, Theme Settings or Theme Actions here. Here we go, Theme Actions. And here you can see Debut and the version number. Just above these options, edit code, edit languages, and all that. Okay, but what I did was I just put that version number in the name of the theme to make it a bit easier. So if we go over here, just to prove that this is 17.10.0, if I go in here, go down to theme actions, you'll see 17.10.0. So if you've generated a Shopify store since this video has been released, then you should have a version of Debut, which is at least that. But if you're working with an older Shopify store with Debut on it, you might have one of these versions. So that's a little trick to figure out what version of the theme you're running. Same goes for all of these other themes as well. If you bought a premium theme, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. So that's how you can find out the version number. All right, so now that we've established that, let's get started creating our local build environment. Now what we're going to do is we're going to combine Themekit with Gulp. And so what we need to create is a node environment here. So unlike using ThemeWatch, we don't need to create a package.json file. There's no JavaScript packages. It's just a command line tool. Whereas now we are going to use the node version, sync it up with Gulp, and create this cool little JavaScript environment. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my VS Code editor. This is what I use to write code. So I'm going to go up here to new terminal. You can always just open up the terminal like this or the Windows equivalent. And what I'm going to do is make a new directory, and I'm just going to call it Debut. Then I'm going to jump into that directory. So I'll make this a bit bigger so you can see it easier. I've just made a directory, and then I'm changing into that directory now. So as usual, I'm going to set up Themekit. So I'm going to run the command theme configure. But before I do that, just want to make sure that you're running Themekit, that you actually have it installed. And a way to do that is just to run theme-v. And here you can see all this comes up. If it wasn't installed, it would come up with an error. Instead, you've got all these different options, okay? So what I'm going to do is run theme configure. This is the way that you can generate a config file. You guys should be aware of how Themekit works before watching this video. If not, there's a few tutorials on YouTube already about it. I have a lesson on my Skillshare channel about it, but it's quite simple. The documentation's online. Essentially what I'm going to do is run theme configure with a bunch of parameters. So the usual ones I need is store. So I'm going to take the store address right here. Next one is theme ID. So what I'm going to do is let's go with the latest version. So the way you can find the theme ID is to open up the theme in the customizer and then grab that from the URL. Oops, I forgot to put in theme.id. And then we are going to find the API password. So to do that, you go into apps, scroll down, manage private apps. As you can see, I've already got a Themekit Slate connection here. In order to be a bit more private, I'm going to create a new private app, but I've got to click this button first. Here we go. This warning wasn't here before, but I'm going to check all those boxes and hit enable. Create a new private app, Themekit connection 2. And all you need to do is make sure that the permissions allow you to read and edit theme files. So there's a lot in here. Here we go, themes. Read and write. That's it. We're going to hit save on that, create the app. All right, and then we just copy this password. Oh, again, I forgot to put the parameter password in there. Password equals. Now theme configure will run. Invalid theme ID. I think what I've done wrong here is I've missed out 2 dashes. So I need a dash there, and a dash there, and a dash there. Run theme configure again, and then let's open up that folder now. Here we go. Debut with the config.yaml file in there. I'm going to do what I usually do, which is ignore files and get it to ignore config/settings_data.json. That's generally a good idea, but not essential to do that. Cool, so now that I've set up config.yaml, I'm going to open up the terminal again. We're inside the debut theme already here. And I'm going to use the regular version of Themekit to download the theme. Okay, so right now we've got a normal Themekit environment. It's very simple. We can just run theme watch, and then Themekit will watch for changes. I can go in and change anything, and it'll upload straight to the theme. All I got to do is refresh the theme on Shopify, and I can see the changes. So that's the normal way of doing it, right? That's the normal Themekit way. But what we're going to do is create a JavaScript environment so that we can use Gulp and chain it with Themekit. So we're still going to use Themekit, but the Node version. I've said that a few times, so let's actually dive in right now and do it. So I'm going to cancel out of Themekit, clear that. And now what I'm going to do is run npm init, and that's going to create a new Node project. You don't have to enter any of the parameters here. You can just press enter on everything, and it'll create a package.json file. Now what I want you to do is install some dependencies. So the first dependency is this one, at Shopify-Themekit, right? So you can just copy this, npm install, and then this will install it in your package.json file and add it to your Node modules. Obviously, this will take a bit of time to load, but I will fast forward through the loading. There we go. Two things you'll notice now. If you go into your package.json file, you can see a dependency with Shopify Themekit in there. It will have generated a package-lock.json file. Don't worry about that. And then now you've got this Node modules folder here. Okay, we need a few other dependencies. We're going to install Gulp as well. So I'll go over here, search for Gulp.js. Right here. And we're going to follow along in this documentation a little bit as well. So something that I didn't mention before is you're going to need to have Node and Node Package Manager installed. So if when you do Node V, it doesn't come up with a version, and when you go npm-v, it doesn't come up with a version, you need to go install those first. I forgot to say that because it's been so long since I've had Node installed, but here's where you can install Node, and then you can just search npm to learn how to install npm as well. But most developers should have this on their computer already. So let's move on. All we got to do is run the command here, npm install --save -dev gulp. Doesn't really matter whether it's a dev dependency or otherwise, because none of this stuff is going to go into the production environment anyway. So not a big deal whether it's a dev dependency or not. All right, let's go over to package.json. There you can see we've installed Gulp. So now we have the two major dependencies we need. We need Gulp for compiling SCSS, and we need Themekit. But Gulp is quite modular. We're going to have to install some other ones too to get Gulp to actually compile the SASS into CSS. So for that, we're going to install another dependency, which is Gulp SASS. So I'll do the same thing as I did before. Type in Gulp SASS into Google. Here we go. Here's how you install it. npm install node SASS, Gulp SASS, save dev. All right, so that's all the dependencies we need for now. I might install one a little later, but that is enough to get us started. So before we create our SCSS files and then our Gulp file in order to compile that SCSS, you're going to need to make sure you've got Gulp CLI installed. I do already, but if not, it should be here in the quick start guide how you do that. If I scroll up, I think it's, here we go, this one. npm install -- global Gulp CLI. So I've already got it installed, so it's just gonna install again. But you definitely need this tool in order to run Gulp commands in the command line. Looks like local access has been denied, so I'm going to just add sudo in front of it. So you might need to do that as well. It'll ask you to put in your computer password. Unfortunately, I'm on a guest account here and do not have sudo access, but I already have the tool installed, so I'm just going to clear this out. And to double check that you've got Gulp installed, you can do Gulp-v. Here you go. I've got my CLI version and my local version. So make sure you have Gulp CLI installed. All right, so now what we're going to do is create our SCSS files. And for that, I'm going to create a new folder here and call it styles. Inside the styles folder, I'm going to create a new SCSS file called customstyles.scss. And what I'm going to do in order to demonstrate, we can put whatever SCSS we want in here, but if you have a bigger project, you can put whatever you want in here. You can have nested folders, you can just have a bunch of different SCSS files in here. For now, I'm going to just create another one as an example and say, let's say we have a separate SCSS file for product pages. So I'm going to have product page.scss. Now what you would do is create some SCSS in here and other places and keep this as like your index, all right? So if you know anything about SASS, if you don't, there is a class on Skillshare that I've created about this. But what we're going to do is import all the styles from the other files into this parent one right here. Assuming there's only one other one, I'm going to just go product page.scss. Okay, so that's going to import all the styles from this one into this one right here. So inside product page.scss, I'm just going to write some random SCSS, going to create a variable called background color, and let's just say red. All right, and then let's do something wacky, like make the background color of the whole body equal to this variable up here, which is going to be red. All right, so now we've got some SCSS files. Nothing's going to happen yet until we set up what's called a gulp file. So I'm going to create a new file here, and we have to call this one gulpfile.js. And in this file, we're going to add in some dependencies. Now, if you get lost at any point, you can always come back to the documentation. I've got it up here to help me move along as well. Let's just follow this for a second and add in this to our gulp file. So as it says, we need to create a file name called gulpfile.js in our project root. So we've done that right here. Let's add in this code, this boilerplate code, which basically doesn't do anything, but it's just to validate that we can run gulp. And then we're just going to run gulp. As you can see, we've got using gulp file, starting, finishing, and it's all done. It finished super quickly because there's basically nothing in here. But if you didn't come up with any errors, then you are ready to go. All right, so I'm going to remove all this code. Let's move along and look at how to do tasks. So over here, we can learn about setting up different tasks. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of all of this and the theory of it, but essentially we can create these quote-unquote tasks, and then we can run those tasks. So they're basically just functions, and inside these functions, it'll do a range of stuff. So we're going to have 2 tasks that we're creating today. You can add as many tasks as you like to your Gulp.js file. But for our purposes, what I'm going to do is just install some dependencies first. Obviously, we're going to need Gulp itself. So I'm going to require Gulp. And I'm also going to require Themekit, of course. There we go. And what was our other dependency? We had Gulp SASS. So we're just going to do const SASS equals require Gulp SASS. All right, so we've got our 3 main dependencies there ready to go. And let's actually create our first task. So what our first task is going to do is actually compile all this SCSS down into a single CSS file that is going to be included in our assets folder. So to start us off, we need to write gulp.task, and then the name of the task, we're going to call this just SASS, and then let's put in a function as the second argument, and then we're going to return gulp src, and here's where we put the path of the file that we want to actually compile. So from the root directory, we've got styles/custom styles.scss, and then we're going to create a new line, pipe it through SASS, and then finally we're going to give it a destination. Don't worry about all these keywords and stuff. Once you set this up, you don't really need to work on this again. Just take in the overall theory here and follow along. I can give you guys this code if you really struggle with any of this stuff. But it's pretty simple. All we're doing is taking the source file here, compiling it with SASS, and we're going to create a destination here, which is going to be gulp dest assets. Sweet. All right, congratulations. We've created our first gulp task. All right, very simple. Take the code, run it through SASS, put it in our assets folder. Now what we can do is run that task right now. So I want you to look inside the assets folder before we do this. See that there's a theme.css file in there. If we run gulp and then the name of the task, gulp SASS, you'll see that we now have a new file in here, customstyles.css. If I click on it, you'll see we've got body, background, color, red. So obviously this is a very basic example, but what's happening here is proof that we can make this partial file, use a variable, which is indicating that we are definitely using SCSS. It's creating this style rule, which is being imported into this SCSS file, and then that's being compiled into customstyles.css. Now for these styles to actually apply, what we're going to have to do is, of course, go into our layout file and include that in our link tag. So sorry, there's no syntax highlighting here, but we just need to look for the place where theme.css is included, which is right here. And I'm just going to copy this code, this link tag right here, and put another reference down here. I don't think we need those extra parameters. And right here, I'm going to change that to custom styles.css. All right, now none of these changes are going live right now because I'm not actually running theme watch, but it's not too much of a problem now. All I need to do to get the theme to update is run theme watch and then just make any kind of change. You know, I usually just add a space, save, take away the space, save again, and as you can see, it'll process and update the layout file. And same goes for up here. I'm going to put a space in, save, take the space out, save, and that'll force it to update. All right, so going over here to the testing shop, I've got the preview already open. Let's refresh the page and you can see here, background color on body is set to red. Obviously these elements are sitting above, but if we actually go in and look at body, you'll see right here, background color red, and that's coming from custom styles, as we can see here. All right, so the next step here is to combine Themekit with Gulp so that we can watch both the SCSS and the theme files at the same time. But before we do that, a little bit of theory. I want to make sure you guys are fully aware of what is actually a Shopify theme file and what is a local file that's kind of outside the Shopify environment, but then ends up indirectly becoming part of the Shopify theme. So as you can see here, this folder here, styles, that is not going to be uploaded to the Shopify theme. And I can prove that to you by going into here, and we can go to edit code and have a look. There is no styles folder here. I want to make that clear that your Shopify theme is always going to have these folders, and it's not going to have any other folders. This is strict. But what we're doing is we're actually creating our own folders, compiling it, putting it into a CSS file in our assets folder, which does become a Shopify file. So if we go back to our online editor here and go into assets, you can see customstyles.css. So I just want to be clear that the Shopify environment, the production environment, it doesn't know of any styles folder with SCSS in it. All it knows is this compiled CSS file right here. And why that's important to note is because we're going to be watching what goes on inside here using Gulp, and we're going to be watching what happens with the actual theme files using Themekit. And what this means also, and the great thing about using this, is that we can create whatever folder structure we want in here. So if I wanted to go in here and create a components file or folder here, and then go in here and maybe say component button.scss, as long as I go into custom styles here and include that, or import that rather. So it's in a nested folder, so we're going to have to do that. Component button. There we go. So I can go in here, and as an example, let's go back to here, look for a button. Here's one right here. If I inspect that element, you can see it's got a BTN class on here. If I zoom in there, BTN, you can see right there. So I could just go in here, create a style rule, and let's just say the background color of that is going to be green. And let's make that important so that it overrides all other styles. Now, in order for this to update, we're going to have to, let's open up another terminal window, and we're just going to have to compile that SCSS file again. Gulp.js. If we go back to the other terminal, you'll see that has updated custom styles, and Themekit recognizes that, and it's updated. All right, so if we go back here now, refresh the page, scroll down, you'll see the button is green. All right, so I just wanted to make that very clear. We can do whatever we want in this styles directory. As long as we get a clean CSS file in our assets folder, it doesn't matter what we do here. All right, so we've got two different things. We've got our local SCSS files that get compiled and put together by Gulp, and our theme files, which are looked after by Themekit and uploaded to Shopify. Hopefully that's crystal clear. If not, just keep going and it'll come to you eventually. Just wanted to drill in that theory because that's the basis of everything we're doing here, and it'll allow you to kind of expand on this and maybe actually start compiling JavaScript, all sorts of things. You can put whatever you want in here. Just know that it's only going to be assets, config, layout, locales, section snippets that are going to go into your actual Shopify theme. All right, so let's turn off Themekit here. And what I'm going to do is create our own watch task inside Gulp, and it's going to be gulp.task watch. Let's put a function in as the second argument, and then I'm going to write gulp.watch, and here is where I write the code for what it's going to watch. So we're going to do styles, and then there's going to be some asterisks in here. So 2 asterisks and then an asterisk.scss. What this is doing is basically saying all the folders and subfolders inside styles, look for files in there with a .scss, and no matter what their name is, check for if that has changed. In the second argument, we're going to write gulp series, and here we want to run that first task, which is SASS. So we want it to compile the SCSS, and then after that, we're going to run a Themekit command. So we can do that using this syntax, which will be watch. And then the second argument, we have our object of options. And all we need to put here to get this to work is the environment. The standard environment is development. If you want to double check that, you can just go over here to your config.yaml file. Whatever is here before the first colon is your environment. So we go back to the Gulp file and we'll put development in here. All right, so that should be all we need to do. Now I'm going to run gulp watch. So we're going to run this task that we've just created. And now you can see that it's starting watch. So it's watching in Gulp, and it's also watching here using Themekit. So essentially running 2 watches at the same time. Now what I'm going to do is change the background color of the button to, let's say, yellow. I'm going to hit save on that, and I want you to look down here at what the terminal is doing. So I hit save, and as you can see, it's running SASS, and then Themekit is processing. Now, why is Themekit processing? Well, essentially what we've got going on is we've changed a value here. Gulp has recognized it. So this style here is pulling into this file, which is ultimately being compiled into CSS and placed in the assets folder. So we go over here to the assets folder, click into custom-styles.css. We can see that all of that compiled SCSS is in this final CSS file. And if we want to check that on the live site, I'll refresh our online code editor here. And as you can see, those styles are in there. So how cool is that? Now we can run both Gulp and Themekit at the same time through this JavaScript environment. here are the two tasks. The first task will compile the SCSS, and the second task will watch. So this will be the one that we run regularly when developing themes. So just like we run theme watch, we're running Gulp watch and theme watch at the same time, and that allows us to write SCSS however we want in our local environment and have it compile to CSS in an instant and uploaded to our store. So this is enough to compile SCSS into a CSS file that we can use in our Shopify theme. But in order to make it more efficient, what we can do is add in an extra dependency here called Gulp clean SCSS, or Gulp clean CSS rather. So Gulp clean CSS, and what it's going to do is minify the CSS as well. So we might as well do that. Assuming we've got all our non-minified code here to work on in development, it's a bit nicer in production if we have it as minified. But this is completely optional. It's up to you whether you want to do this. This is just going to make the site slightly, or the theme slightly faster if we minify our CSS. All right, so going to run this npm install gulp clean css --save -dev. All right, so that's done, and now we want to add that into our list of dependencies up here. Const, we'll just call it clean equals require gulp clean CSS. And then what we're going to do is add it to the pipe here. So after we compile it to CSS, let's clean it up. And what we're going to do is clean, and then in here we put in some parameters. So all I'm going to do is put in compatibility and make it compatible with IE11. That is an optional option right there. That's just what I had set up on a previous project. But let's now run gulp SASS, see if it still works. It's finished. And let's have a look now at customstyles.css. You'll see it's now minified. So all the white space has been removed and it's all just on the one line. So that's what minifying CSS is all about there. And as always, that's now part of our gulp SASS task. So if we run gulp watch and we make a change in here, let's change the background color to green. Hit save on that. It's going to recompile that SCSS into CSS. That's going to change this file. That's going to trigger Themekit watch. It's going to process that, upload it, and now if we go to our online store, the background color is now green. All right, so that's how we can take these modern themes, the ones that we can take from our actual Shopify store, and create a new CSS file to edit the styles. Now, unfortunately, if we want to kind of break this already compiled theme.css file up into multiple components and kind of break this apart, that's going to take a while. That was my original idea for the video, but then I realized that would take hours and hours and hours. Maybe that's an idea you want to do if, for instance, you're running an earlier version of Debut. So remember when we looked at the earlier version, the SCSS hasn't been compiled into CSS in the actual file right here. So you could maintain all of that. You could break up all these different parts, put them into partials, compile, and then it go into CSS. So if you're starting from this point, maybe it's worth it. But usually, and this is what I did in the past, I started with a Slate project, which already had the style sheets broken up into the folder structure, and then I brought that across to a project like this. So as an extra optional step, if you are coming from Slate, I'm going to show you how you would go about that right now. Again, if you haven't dealt with Slate in the past, don't worry about this, but this is for the people that are trying to go from Slate to Themekit. I'll show you how that would kind of work. So if I go into a Slate project that I have already, so I'm going to open up in a new window here. And here you can see the familiar structure of a Slate project. So it's got this src folder here that compiles into a dist folder, and that's what goes up to the theme. All right. So as you can see here, we've got a styles folder. And so what we could do is just take all of these styles and then bring them over to the other project. I didn't actually create a new window, but essentially what we would do if I open up that previous project again, if I go into here, this was it, wasn't it? I could essentially replace this folder with this and then run the same command. So it'll compile all of this into a single file that will go into our assets folder. And that's some way that you can maintain the structure of Slate in your new Themekit Gulp environment. But the issue you're going to probably come across, which is the issue I came across when I was trying this out before I started this video, is if you've got liquid variables in here. So like for instance, where there's, here we go, variables.scss.liquid, you've got a ton of liquid code in here. And that's not going to work in this environment because your styles here are outside of the Themekit /Shopify theme environment. As we've mentioned before, it's just pure SCSS. It's going to get compiled into CSS. So that is a big consideration. You won't be able to put variables into your SCSS files using this approach. That is one downside of coming from Slate to this. So if you wanted to kind of use liquid variables, you would just basically have to do it inside the templates, I'm afraid, because of course Shopify are moving away from SCSS inside their themes. But that's not a big deal. If you want to bring those in, you can always just create a new snippet, put it at the top of your file with all your, I guess, style variables and do it that way. So that is a limitation, but if you are starting from a Slate starting point, bring this folder over, the styles folder, and then just attempt to remove all those liquid variables. So that basically sums up how to compile SCSS locally and upload it as CSS to your Shopify theme. So there you have it, guys. You've now learned how to use SCSS with Themekit to build Shopify themes in 2021 and beyond. Hope you guys were able to follow along. If not, leave a comment below. Sometimes configuration can be a bit of a bitch. It's definitely not my favorite part of web development, but I hope you agree, once we've done what we've done today, it is a lot cleaner than using Slate or the online store editor, and it's going to be a nicer experience moving forward. So that's it for today, guys. Remember, you can always find my longer form classes on Skillshare.com. I'll put the link for the free trial in the description box below, and I'll see you on the next video.